Good morning and welcome to my YouTube channel, J.E.M.E. This morning we will be jammed up under the theme The Lamb and the 144,000 on Mount Zion. And we will be looking at Revelation chapter 14. And it reads, And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, with him 144,000, having his father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sang as it were a new song before the throne, and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without faults before the throne of God. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear Yah, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of water. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torments ascended up forever and ever, and they have no rest, day nor night, those who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of Yah, and the faithful, and the faith of Yeshua. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works to follow them. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, Thrust in thy sickle, and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was rent. And another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in thy sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. This is the word of the Lord. So let's just go into this a little bit more. The first thing I would like us to note is where the Lamb stood. The Lamb stood on Mount Zion. And when you think of Mount Zion, you think of a parched place. And when you think of parched, you mean we know that it's extreme thirst. So first and foremost, that's what Mount Zion represents. It also represents a hill on which the higher or more ancient part of Jerusalem was built. And lastly, we know that Mount Zion was where the temple stood, and it was called the dwelling place of the Father. So this here explains why Mount Zion would have been the location where the Lamb stood. It's the place where the dwelling place of the Father was. That's where the temple was. So we see here in verse 1 that the Lamb stood on Mount Zion. There's always intentionality when we read the Bible. Everything. There is reason behind it, and it's important for us to understand why something was happening, why it occurred at a particular location, right? At a particular time, and with a particular people or person. So we see here that the Lamb stood on Mount Zion, and what he had with him was 144,000 individuals with the Father's name written on their forehead. We read previously that the push was towards the mark of the beast written on the foreheads or the right hand of an individual. Now we see in here that the Father is sealing his people, and that's the 144,000 with the mark on their foreheads. We're going to now skip verse 2 because it basically just speaks of the voice from heaven. And we're going to go to verse 3, where there was a new song. So we know that the angels, we know that the beasts, we know that the elders are in worship and in awe of the Father, and they're singing consistently. They're worshiping, praising Him consistently, right? In adoration of His holiness, in adoration of who He is. However, a new song was sung, and the four beasts and the elders, and no other man knew that song except the 144,000 that were redeemed from the earth. So one would think that the beasts and the elders would have known those songs because at the end of the day, they're literally doing this consistently. That's what they're doing in the heaven, right? However, this is for the set apart. This is for a specific people, and this shows the level of value placed on those people, right? So it was done by them. Now let's look at a little bit more about those people. We see here that those were the people who were not defiled with women, they were virgins. We also see here that they were redeemed. We also see here that in their mouth was found no guile. And lastly, we saw that they were without fault before the throne. Now, there is one person that the Bible does speak of in terms of being without fault, being a blameless man, and that was Job. And then we've put so much emphasis on the man that Job was, right? Especially with preaching and so forth. But here we're saying that the 144,000 seem to have been even more blameless because they were also virgins. We know that Job had children. So there is a level of honor and reverence given to those. And I can understand why there was a song that nobody else knew because they were really and truly set apart. So let's go on to continue. Verse 6 goes on to explain that there was another angel in the midst of heaven having the everlasting gospel preached to them that dwell on the earth, and every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, we're going into verse 7, fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of judgment is come. And a lot of the times we tend to um, ignore the fact that our Heavenly Father is also a judge. And we somewhat created this perception of who we believe He ought to be, where He ought to be somewhat like a doormat, right? And all He does is loves. And His love comes in a passive, meek kind type of way. And we are so wrong about it because over and over we see how our Father chastised those that He loved when they were in rebellion, when they served idols. There were punishments. And like the word says, you reap what you sow, right? So we do have to change that distorted perspective that we have of who He is. He is the great judge as well, right? So that needs to be taken into account. So we see here that in verse 7, the angel is saying with a loud voice, fear, be terrified of our Father and give glory to Him, for the hour of judgment is come. And persons are to worship the one who made the heaven, the earth, the sea, the fountains of water. And after this angel, another one followed, saying, Babylon, that great city, Babylon, what is considered to be an impenetrable city, formidable. Babylon is fallen. And she was not fallen just by being fallen, there was a reason. So she was made to fall at that point in time. And the reason is because she made all nations drink of the wrath of her fornication. And when we speak of fornication, we're speaking of being in covenants, right? Because we know that sex, first and foremost, is a covenant being formed. So when you go out committing fornication, or when you go out making covenants with others, you're putting yourself at certain risk. because what you're covenanting with, most of the times you don't even know. And it is an open door because the two becoming one. And I remember the woman at the well when the father said, when Yeshua said to her, "Where is your husband?" And she said she have no husband. And she was told that she had five. So that we need to be careful with. So then there was commitments being made by Babylon, and those commitments which are outside of the will of Yah is what is considered to be the fornication, is what is considered to be the idolatry. So the wine, and here we would realize that there is emphasis placed on the wine, and I believe the reason the emphasis is placed on the wine in this chapter is more or less because the word is called, Yeshua is called the vine, and we are considered to be the branches. And we know that when it comes to the wine, the grapes, there is the vine, right? And the vine is connected to the roots, and it's also connected to the branches. So we see here that Babylon seemed to be the reason, seemed to be the vine that has the other nations, the branches, drink of her fornication. So the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God." So now we see it's been changed from the wine of Babylon to the wine of the wrath of God. Intentionality. As what you reap is what you sow. And it kind of reminds me of the saying on earth where people would say, "You live by the gun, you die by the gun." Right? There seemed to be a direct relationship with regards to where the area of faulting is and the respective punishments or results. So we see here that the wrath of the Father is what would now be the result of Babylon and all other nations that committed fornication that followed after the footsteps of Babylon. And here we're seeing in verse 10 that the wrath of God, it's not mixed. Do not expect mercy, do not expect anything else with it. The scripture is saying that the wrath of God is poured out without mixture into a cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb, without mixture. And I am certain there is nothing, because over and over we're seeing that the Father is just seeking to draw us closer, just seeking to draw us closer. He chastises who he loves. So there is mercy. And the word also says his mercy is renewed every morning, right? So when you take this into account, you see that there is mixture with the punishment and so forth. However, here we're saying that the wrath is without mixture. It is pure wrath. Nothing like we've ever experienced or could imagine. The pure wrath is being poured out upon Babylon and the nations that follow her. And as much as we may think Babylon represents an actual, just an actual city, and then the nations probably represent certain countries, it actually represents different kindreds, peoples, and tongues. So it's not to say in one country they would be experiencing the wrath of the Father, and in another country that will not be experienced. It basically speaks to a people. So that's not necessarily the case, right? With it being country, the nations represent people. So let's go a bit further. We see here that in verse 13, um, there is, let's read it. Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labor and their works to follow them. Yes. So this is where, in essence, the saints are being vindicated. Those who keep the commandments of the Father are being vindicated. Those who have faith in the Son are being vindicated. Right? Those who are persecuted for the word are being vindicated. So verse 14 goes on to say, and I looked and behold a white cloud, sorry, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and on his hand a sharp sickle. And as we know, the sickle is actually a pruning hook, right? So it's a hook fine knife. So it's literally used to prune. What reapers and wine dressers use to prune out the wines so that you can use the wine itself and use the grapes to make wine. So now, because we know that our Father is conceived, is our Father is the saints' vine, and we are the branches, there is a direct correlation. So here we're seeing that um, the Son of Man, Yeshua, he has a sickle. So he's coming. It's time. The harvest is ripe. It's ready. The people, the saints, the remnants, the called out, the ecclesia, they're prepared, they're ready, they're disciplined, they're equipped, right? They're sealed. So now that this has occurred, it's now time for Yeshua to come and reap his harvest. He came, he died to save mankind. The seed was the death to provide the way for salvation. And now that we have accepted, embraced, upheld, and live out the gospel, his instructions, the word, we are now at a point where we are equipped, where we are worthy to be part of his bride. So now the bridegroom, the vine, is coming with the sickle, right? So let's continue down to verse 80. And another angel, so following this, we have another angel. Another angel came out from the altar, which had power over fire. And the angel cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust in thy sharp sickle and gather the cluster of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So that angel with the power over fire gave that loud cry so that the grapes that are fully ripe, so that the people who are ready, so that the ecclesia, the bride, can actually be pulled out. So thrust in your sharp, it's not any type of sickle, your sharp sickle, and gather the cluster of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. And look at the angel that is saying that, the one with the power over fire, so you know what's coming after. So then at the end of the day, the people of the Father are being taken up so that they would not in any way endure any portion of this wrath, which is without mixture. It is for those who had the mark of the beast. So then it was ideal and it made sense for the son to come and pull up his bride, right? To come and gather the vine of the earth. And we see here in verse 19, I think I'll put verse 19 to 20 to close it off. And the angel thrust in the sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and the blood came out of the winepress even unto the horse bridles by the space of 1,600 furlongs. So we see how this ended, where the latter angel spoke, the prior angel submitted. Yeah. And this is where commands and instructions are constantly being obeyed. So there is always a command, there is always an instruction, and it's a matter of obedience and submission. So even as we go throughout the day, the hope for you, the hope for me, is to really look into the life that we're living and ensuring that we're producing a disciplined and equipped branch so that when the day comes, whether we be alive or dead, we are a bride that is favorable. We are a bride that is found worthy. So may we be intentional about what is required. May we be intentional about being sensitive to the Holy Spirit. May we be intentional about submitting to what He is asking. So I would like to thank you for being gemmed up with me, Janelle. And as we say, GEMS stands for J Empowerment Early Morning Empowering Devotion. Thank you for being gemmed up with me, and have a wonderful day.